I left my family after years of being the disappointing child. Now my golden child sister has fallen from grace. I, 25F, have always been the black sheep of my family. My older sister, Emma, 28F, has been the golden child for as long as I can remember. Our parents, especially our mom, have always favored her over me. It's been this way since we were kids, and it's only gotten worse as we've grown older. Growing up, Emma was always the star student, the popular girl, and the one who seemed to excel at everything she tried. She was captain of the cheerleading squad, got straight A's, and was even voted prom queen. Meanwhile, I struggled with school, had a small group of friends, and preferred spending time in the art room rather than at social events. Our parents never missed a chance to compare us. "Why can't you be more like Emma?" was a phrase I heard all too often. They'd praise her accomplishments endlessly while barely acknowledging mine. When I got a B on a test, they'd ask why it wasn't an A. When Emma got an A, they'd throw a celebration dinner. This pattern continued into our adult lives. Emma went to an Ivy League college on a scholarship, while I chose a state school to study art. Our parents were thrilled about Emma's choice but skeptical about mine. They constantly questioned my decision, asking if I was sure I could make a living as an artist. I remember the day I told them about my college choice. We were sitting at the dinner table, and I had spent weeks gathering courage to share my decision. When I finally told them, my dad's face fell, and my mom looked like she might cry. Emma, of course, chimed in with, "Are you sure that's a good idea? Art school isn't exactly known for job security." My parents nodded in agreement, and I felt my dreams crumbling before my eyes. Despite their disapproval, I stuck to my decision. Those 4 years in college were some of the best of my life. I finally felt like I belonged somewhere, surrounded by people who understood and appreciated creativity. I thrived in my classes, even making the dean's list several times. But whenever I shared these achievements with my family, they were met with lukewarm responses. "That's nice, dear," my mom would say, before quickly changing the subject to Emma's latest accomplishment. After college, Emma landed a high-paying job at a prestigious law firm in the city. I, on the other hand, struggled to find my footing. I worked various part-time jobs while trying to establish myself as a freelance illustrator. Our parents were always eager to hear about Emma's latest case or promotion, but they'd change the subject when I tried to talk about my art projects. I remember one particularly painful family dinner about 6 months after graduation. Emma was visiting from the city, and our parents had prepared her favorite meal. The entire conversation revolved around her recent win in court. My mom kept saying how proud she was, and my dad couldn't stop grinning. When I tried to share about a small illustration job I had landed for a local magazine, my mom cut me off mid-sentence to ask Emma about her plans for buying an apartment. The situation at home became unbearable. I was still living with our parents to save money, but the constant comparisons and subtle put-downs were taking a toll on my mental health. Emma had her own apartment in the city, paid for by our parents, of course. Every time she visited, it was like a royal arrival. Our parents would spend days preparing, cleaning the house, and cooking her favorite meals. When she walked in the door, they'd greet her with hugs and excited chatter. My presence, on the other hand, often felt like an afterthought. I tried to talk to them about how I felt several times, but it never went well. They'd accuse me of being jealous of Emma's success or tell me I was being too sensitive. "We just want what's best for you," they'd say, which always felt like code for "we want you to be more like Emma." The constant comparisons affected every aspect of my life. I started doubting my choices, my abilities, and even my worth as a person. There were days when I could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by feelings of inadequacy and failure. I began to withdraw from my friends, embarrassed by my lack of success compared to my sister. Even my love life wasn't safe from their criticism. When I brought home my first serious boyfriend in college, an art student like me, my parents were less than impressed. They spent the entire dinner grilling him about his career prospects and making thinly veiled comments about the instability of artistic careers. Meanwhile, when Emma brought home her boyfriend, a law student from a wealthy family, my parents practically rolled out the red carpet. Things came to a head last week. I had finally landed a significant illustration project for a children's book series. It wasn't a huge paycheck, but it was a step in the right direction for my career. I was excited to share the news with my family at dinner. As usual, the conversation revolved around Emma's latest achievements. She had just won a big case at work and was being considered for a promotion. Our parents couldn't stop gushing about how proud they were. When there was finally a lull in the conversation, I took my chance. I told them about my illustration project, trying to contain my excitement. My mom's response? "That's nice, dear, but don't you think it's time you got a real job? You're not getting any younger, you know." My dad just nodded in agreement. I was crushed. I tried to explain that this was a real job, that it could lead to more opportunities in the future. But they weren't. Listening, Emma chimed in, saying she could probably get me an entry-level position at her law firm if I wanted a stable career. That was the last straw. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I told them I was tired of being treated like a disappointment, that I was proud of my work and my choices. I said I couldn't stay in a house where I was constantly made to feel inferior. My parents looked shocked. My mom started to say something about how I was being overly sensitive, but I cut her off. I told them I was moving out, that I'd rather struggle on my own than live with their constant disapproval. Emma tried to play peacemaker, telling me to calm down and not make rash decisions, but I could see the smug look in her eyes. She was enjoying this, enjoying being the perfect daughter while I was the family disappointment. I stormed up to my room and started packing. My parents and Emma followed, trying to talk me out of it. But their words only confirmed what I already knew. They saw me as a failure, a burden. My mom even had the audacity to say, "If you leave now, don't expect us to help you when you can't make rent." As I was throwing clothes into a suitcase, memories flooded my mind. The time I won a local art competition in high school and my parents didn't even come to the award ceremony because it clashed with one of Emma's debate tournaments. The countless times they'd introduced Emma as our daughter, the lawyer, and me as just our other daughter. The look of disappointment on their faces when I chose art school over the business program they'd wanted me to attend. That night, I left with whatever I could fit in my car. As I drove away, I saw my parents and Emma standing in the doorway. My mom was crying, my dad looked angry, and Emma just looked smug. I felt a mix of emotions: sadness, anger, fear, but also a strange sense of relief. I'm currently staying with a friend, trying to figure out my next move. I know leaving was drastic, but I couldn't take it anymore. Am I overreacting? Should I have stayed and tried to make them understand? Or was leaving the right choice? I feel lost and alone, but also somewhat relieved to be out of that toxic environment. The thought of building a life on my own terms is both exciting and terrifying. I'm scared about how I'll manage financially, but I'm also looking forward to pursuing my art without constant criticism and comparisons. Any advice or support would be appreciated. How do I move forward from here? How do I build a life for myself while dealing with the emotional fallout of leaving my family? And most importantly, how do I start believing in myself after years of being made to feel like I'm not good enough? Update 1: It's been about 2 months since I left my parents' house and a lot has happened. I wanted to update you all and thank you for your support and advice. Your kind words and encouragement have been a lifeline during this challenging time. After I left, I spent a week crashing on my friend's couch while I looked for a more permanent solution. It was tough, but I managed to find a tiny studio apartment that I could just barely afford with my savings and the income from my illustration project. It's not much, but it's mine. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I have my own space. The first few weeks were hard. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove to myself and maybe to my family that I could make it on my own. I picked up a part-time job at a local coffee shop to supplement my income from illustration work. Between the 2 jobs, I was working almost constantly, but it felt good to be self-sufficient. There were nights when I'd come home exhausted, my hands aching from hours of drawing and making lattes, and I'd wonder if I'd made the right choice. The little voice in my head, which sounded suspiciously like my mother, would whisper that I was foolish for thinking I could make it as an artist. But then I'd look at the illustrations I was creating and I'd remember why I chose this path. My parents tried to contact me several times, but I wasn't ready to talk to them. I needed time to process everything and focus on standing on my own 2 feet. Their voicemails ranged from angry demands that I come home to tearful pleas asking if I was okay. It was hard to ignore them, but I knew I needed space to figure things out for myself. Emma called a few times too, always with the same patronizing tone, telling me I was being childish and that I should come home and apologize. Her words stung, but they also strengthened my resolve to succeed on my own terms. About a month after I left, something unexpected happened. The children's book I had illustrated was published and it started gaining traction. The author shared it on social media and it caught the attention of a few influential parenting bloggers. Suddenly, I was getting emails from publishers interested in my work. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment, staring at my computer screen in disbelief as the emails came in. For the first time, I felt like my dreams weren't just pipe dreams. I cried that night, but they were tears of joy and relief. I landed 2 more book deals in quick succession. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough that I could quit my coffee shop job and focus on illustration full-time. For the first time, I felt like my career was taking off. With this newfound success came a boost in confidence. I started believing in myself and my abilities in a way I never had before. I realized that I didn't need my family's approval to validate my choices or my worth. Around this time, Emma showed up at my apartment unannounced. She said she was worried about me and that our parents were upset. I invited her in, more out of politeness than anything else. At first, she seemed genuinely interested in how I was doing. She looked around my tiny apartment and asked about my work. I showed her the published book and told her about the new projects. For a moment, I thought maybe she was finally seeing me as an equal. But then she started in on the same old rhetoric. She said that while it was nice that I had some success, it wasn't a stable career. She talked about how worried our parents were, how they just wanted what was best for me. She even suggested again that she could get me a job at her law firm. As she spoke, I felt a familiar feeling of inadequacy creeping in. But this time, something was different. I looked at my work spread out on my desk, thought about the emails from publishers in my inbox, and I felt a surge of pride. I lost my temper. I told her that I was doing fine, that I was happier than I'd ever been. I pointed out that, for the first time, I was supporting myself entirely on my own work, without any help from our parents. I asked her if she could say the same, considering our parents were still paying for her apartment. Emma's face changed. The mask of concern dropped, and I saw the same smug, superior expression I'd seen the night I left. She snapped at me, saying I was ungrateful and selfish. She said I was breaking our parents' hearts and that I should be ashamed of myself. I asked her to leave. As she was going, she turned and said, "Don't come crying to us when this little art phase of yours fails. We won't be there to bail you out." After she left, I felt shaken but also strangely empowered. I realized that I didn't need their approval anymore. I was making it on my own, doing what I loved, and that was enough. The encounter with Emma made me reflect on our relationship over the years. I remembered how close we were as kids, before the competition and comparisons tore us apart. I felt a pang of sadness for the sisterhood we'd lost, but I also realized that I couldn't keep holding on to that idealized version of our relationship. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work with renewed vigor. I started reaching out to other artists and illustrators, building a network of like-minded creatives. For the first time, I felt like I was part of a community that understood and valued me. I also started therapy to work through the years of emotional baggage I'd been carrying. It's been tough, but it's helping me understand my worth beyond my family's expectations or my career success. I'm still not ready to talk to my parents, but I feel stronger now. I'm focusing on my work and building a life that makes me happy. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. There are still days when I doubt myself, when I miss my family despite everything. But then I look at what I've accomplished in just 2 months on my own, and I feel proud. I'm learning to be my own cheerleader, to celebrate my victories without needing anyone else's validation. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. To anyone out there facing similar struggles, know that you're not alone. It's okay to choose yourself, to pursue your passions, and to define success on your own terms. Update 2. It's been almost a year since my last update, and I can hardly believe how much has changed. I want to share what's happened, and thank you all again for your continued support throughout this journey. My illustration career has really taken off. The children's book series I worked on became quite popular, and I've since illustrated several more books. I've also started taking on commissions for magazine covers and even a few advertising campaigns. It's been a lot of work, but I'm loving every minute of it. About 6 months ago, I moved into a larger apartment. It's still not huge, but it has enough space for a proper art studio. Being able to separate my work and living spaces has done wonders for my productivity and mental health. I remember the day I moved in, standing in the middle of my new studio, surrounded by blank canvases and the smell of fresh paint. I felt a sense of accomplishment and possibility that I had never experienced before. My confidence has grown along with my career. I've been invited to speak at a few local schools about careers in illustration, and I've even started mentoring a couple of young artists. It feels surreal to be in a position to inspire others when not too long ago, I was questioning my own choices. Now, on to the family drama. A few months after my last update, my mom called me out of the blue. She was crying and asked if we could meet. I was hesitant, but I agreed to meet her for coffee. My therapist had been encouraging me to set boundaries and work on healing my relationship with my family, so I saw this as an opportunity to start that process. When we met, she looked tired and upset. She started by apologizing for how they had treated me. She said that after I left, they had a lot of time to reflect on their behavior. She admitted that they had been unfair to me and that they regretted always comparing me to Emma. Her words were what I had longed to hear for years, but I found myself feeling conflicted. Part of me wanted to accept her apology and fall into her arms like a little girl. Another part of me was wary, wondering if this was just another attempt to get me to conform to their expectations. Then she dropped a bombshell. Emma had been fired from her job at the law firm. Apparently, she had been falsifying her billable hours and overcharging clients. The firm found out and terminated her immediately. I was shocked. The golden child, the perfect daughter, had fallen from grace. I felt a mix of emotions: surprise, a twisted sense of satisfaction, and oddly, concern for my sister. But that wasn't all. Emma had been living well beyond her means, relying on our parents to subsidize her lifestyle. When she lost her job, she couldn't keep up with her expenses. She had racked up a huge amount of credit card debt and was facing eviction from her apartment. My parents had been trying to help her, but the situation was dire. They had already spent a significant portion of their savings trying to keep Emma afloat. My mom broke down as she told me this, saying they felt betrayed and didn't know what to do. As I listened to my mom, I realized how much pressure Emma must have been under all these years. Always having to be perfect, always having to live up to our parents' expectations. In a way, I felt sorry for her. My mom asked if I would consider coming home for dinner to talk things through as a family. I was conflicted, but I agreed. I felt I was in a stronger place emotionally and could handle it now. The family dinner was tense. Emma was there, looking nothing like the polished, confident person I remembered. She was defensive and angry, lashing out at everyone. She accused our parents of not supporting her enough and me of abandoning the family. I stayed calm and stood my ground. I told them about my successes, about how I had built a career and a life for myself without their help. Our parents listened with a mix of pride and regret on their faces. Emma stormed out halfway through dinner. After she left, my parents broke down. They apologized again for how they had treated me and said they were proud of what I had accomplished. They asked if I would consider moving back home. I told them I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't interested in moving back. I had built a life for myself and I was happy with it. However, I said I was open to working on our relationship and spending more time together. Since then, things have been slowly improving. My parents and I talk regularly now, and they've even come to visit my new apartment. They ask about my work and seem genuinely interested. It's a strange feeling, having them actually listen to me and show pride in my accomplishments. Emma, on the other hand, has cut off contact with all of us. Last I heard, she had moved to another city to start over. I've tried reaching out to her a few times, but she hasn't responded. I hope she's doing okay and that she can find her own path, free from the pressure of being the perfect child. This whole experience has taught me a lot about family dynamics, self-worth, and the importance of following your own path. I've learned that success isn't about living up to someone else's expectations, but about being true to yourself and doing what makes you happy. I've also learned the value of forgiveness. It hasn't been easy, but I'm working on forgiving my parents and Emma, not for their sake, but for my own peace of mind. I've realized that holding on to anger and resentment only hurts me in the long run. My relationship with my parents is still a work in progress. There are moments when old patterns emerge and I have to remind them and myself that things are different now. But overall, we're moving in a positive direction. They're learning to appreciate me for who I am, not who they wanted me to be. As for my career, it continues to flourish. I've recently been approached about illustrating a graphic novel, which is a dream come true. I'm also considering teaching a course at a local community college, sharing my skills and experiences with others who are passionate about art. Looking back on the past year, I'm amazed at how much has changed. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I had made the right choice in leaving. But now I know it was the best decision I could have made. It forced me to stand on my own 2 feet, to believe in myself when no one else did. To anyone out there facing similar family issues, hang in there. Stand up for yourself, pursue your passions, and don't let anyone make you feel less than you are. You never know how things might turn out. Success and happiness can come in many forms, and sometimes the path to finding them isn't the one others have chosen for you. Family dynamics can be complicated, and healing takes time. Be patient with yourself and with others. Set boundaries when needed, but also be open to reconciliation if it feels right. Remember that you have value, regardless of your family's approval or anyone else's expectations. I'm grateful for this community and the support you've shown me throughout this journey. Your encouragement has meant more than you know. Thank you for being there during the tough times and celebrating the victories with me. As I look to the future, I'm excited about what's to come. I feel like I'm finally living life on my own terms, pursuing my passions, and building meaningful relationships. It's not always easy, but it's genuine and fulfilling in a way I never experienced before. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. It's meant the world to me. Here's to following our dreams, healing old wounds, and creating the life we want to live.